So what I'm here today to talk to you about is how can we revisit our leadership? How can we revisit the way that our organization has related to employees, to our community that literally creates our products and services every day? How can we be most inclusive of all those kinds of people that we want to attract and retain and enable their best work? And what does diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging have to do with that equation? And I'm going to explain some frameworks and take you through what inclusive leadership really looks like, sounds like. What does it feel like to do it? What is possible for us in our own transformation? And what is possible for those around us who have been craving this their whole lives?
Oh my goodness, Jennifer Brown has been amazing. I think Jennifer is extremely engaging. I think she's super passionate around the topic, and I can tell that she's really living out her purpose.
I love that she's real. She takes a really complex topic and breaks it down into real-life examples that people can take and deploy with their teams.
The material meets employees where they are.
Allyship is caring about and taking on board someone else's experience and involving ourselves in ameliorating that experience, in improving that experience with anything that we have access to. It was given to us for a reason.
I especially appreciated the idea of turning privilege kind of on its head.
And if we could pause and back up, and instead of viewing privilege as something we never speak of, what if we spoke about it as the tailwinds that enabled me to get further faster without as much of a cost? And if I did get further faster because of these tailwinds, what am I doing with the fact that I'm further?
Organizations are these living organisms, and it's like health check, right? It's just where is there a problem and how do we fix it, heal it? It's fascinating to see a system try to change, but really the way that a system changes is by the individual different behaviors of the people in the system. So what I'm encouraging is different individual behaviors every day and giving people a roadmap to do that.
It matters what you say, what you don't say, what you have a comfort with talking about, what is awkward for you. All of this is on display for leaders. And there seems to sometimes not be a lot of grace and space to learn when you are in a public leadership role.
We can't just lead the change, we have to be in it, and we have to be changed by it.
Perfection is impossible. However, brave imperfection is exactly where we should be. And the opportunity for leaders is so important, because if we don't evolve with the changing needs of the people that we lead, we are going to miss the opportunity to connect with them on a deeper level.
The voice that you just heard was mine. My whole life, I wanted to be a singer, a dancer, a performer. I grew up in a musical family, and from a very early age, I felt compelled to perform, to express myself, and to hopefully move and inspire others. When I began my vocal training, my professional training for a career in opera and music theater, however, I discovered that my voice was prone to injury. I endured several vocal surgeries. So the recovery period from vocal surgery includes several periods, 2 to 3 weeks of complete silence, and then your voice returns as a tiny squeak, and then is slowly and gradually followed by a resonant sound that gains in strength and volume over time. In my case, my instrument would be forever compromised. Without an instrument that I could rely on to express myself and, of course, to make my living, I knew that I needed to find another career beyond music. I worked odd jobs for a period of years where I healed my mind and my heart from this devastating loss. But then something very unexpected happened. My new field emerged, and what would become my current work and my enduring life's passion. And that is the work of organizational development and the opportunity and privilege that I have now to build leadership, diversity, and inclusion programs for the workplace. I held corporate roles in this space for a couple years, and then 6 years ago, I hung my shingle out, became an entrepreneur, and started my own consulting company. Today, I get to work every day with talented colleagues who share my passion for building more inclusive workplaces for the future. So in hindsight, I was indeed meant to value and leverage my voice, but just not as a singer, but rather to tell my truth and to create a safe space for those who historically have had little or no voice to tell theirs. Many talented employees in today's workplace tell us in focus groups and interviews that they don't feel comfortable bringing their whole selves to work. They are just getting by every day, but they're leaving their truest talents and deepest passions elsewhere. In any organization where this is true, you can bet that the bottom line is being impacted. I find this concept of not feeling comfortable bringing your whole self to work especially powerful personally, because it was my story too. During the years that I was an employee in corporate America, I held back, afraid to tell my truth for fear of being judged. So there are visible and invisible aspects of diversity in all of us, and I am no different. What you think you might observe about me as true, like my race, my gender, my generation, and what you may not perceive about me or wrongly understand, my educational background, my religion, my sexual orientation. As Marianne Williamson once said, as we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So liberating myself from my own fear meant coming out as a member of the gay and lesbian community and authentically living my life. In the workplace, this meant not changing the narrative about how I spent my weekend come Monday morning, and not changing the pronoun about my partner of 15 years now, Michelle, when I talked about her. If this is true for me and took so many years and was so difficult, imagine how LGBT and non-LGBT people, how much energy and precious effort they are devoting every day in the workplace to navigating, managing, and otherwise covering their deepest truth, their gifts, their struggles, their richness, and their color that could be contributing not only to their professional development and their success, but actually withholding it from the organizations that so desperately need every ounce of that energy in order to remain nimble, flexible, and competitive. What is the cost to this? So this is a wake-up call for capitalism, in my opinion. Capitalism is still saddled with homogeneous management teams that do not reflect a diversifying marketplace, which they are allegedly selling to. It is also saddled with hierarchical management structures built in a command and control era that stifle innovation and diverse voices. All kinds of organizations today, for and nonprofits, are struggling to capitalize on the exploding buying power of minority communities and markets. Consider in the last 20 years that the buying power of Asian American communities has grown by nearly 400%, African American communities 200%, Latin American communities 500%. It's staggering to note the buying power of the LGBT community alone today is estimated at $700 billion. So to capture these markets, companies must establish credibility with them. And their internal talent is going to play a key role in establishing this credibility. But it must be done right. In the age of transparency, word travels fast when companies do not walk the talk. So what's working? We see things that are working in our consulting work, and one of the things that excites me is the presence of employee networks. Thousands of employees strong in some companies. These are networks like women's networks, LGBT, multicultural, Gen Y networks, disabilities networks, veterans networks. These networks are contributing to the marketing, recruitment, and retention activities that their companies are undertaking. So anytime you see an ad campaign that manages to culturally competently address a diverse market through images and language that it uses in a respectful way, you can bet that these employee networks are behind the scenes making that happen, contributing their knowledge, their social capital, and their community relationships to making those campaigns a reality. These are the same employees that are attending career fairs and community events, representing their brands with pride on their days off, on their own time, and sometimes on their own dime. They are vouching for their employers as great places to work. So you can't buy endorsements like this. Additionally, the war for talent is still raging. Recessionary environment notwithstanding, companies are still seeking the best and the brightest, and they vie fiercely to place on lists like the SpeakInc top 50 companies for business, top 50 company for diversity, and they are still valuing that more than ever because they know what kind of message it sends to the diverse talent that they are trying to source. And lastly, it's very interesting to note, over the last 10 years, the publicly traded companies on that same list, the SpeakInc top 50 companies for diversity, has outperformed the 3 major stock market indices by an average of 25%. So diversity is good for business and the bottom line. But we will need more voices, more courage, more acts of inclusion for the road ahead. My advice, of course, never take your voice for granted. Challenge yourself to bring more of your full self to work every day. Think about inspiring others, not just with your job performance and how hard you work, but who you are, what your story is, where you came from, what shaped you, the challenges you faced, what made you who you are. Be curious and inquisitive. I call it being culturally dexterous. Ensure your language is always inclusive. Take responsibility for organizational culture, even if you're in a small company. And finally, be fluent in how diversity enables business. So whatever you choose, know that you are doing your part towards nothing less than the reinvention of capitalism. Thank you very much.